Immunization is huge. I mean, we've definitely seen it as these calves go through the production phase. Those calves that did not get vaccinated properly, they're going to get sick. And those are the ones that gives you black eyes when you sell those cattle and they go through the marketplace or go through a private sale somewhere and you have issues with them. They're not going to buy those calves again next year, especially at the prices they're giving for them right now. They're just not going to do it.
Welcome to the Beef Podcast Show, brought to you by Wisenetics. I'm Dr. AJ Tarpoff, and we are dedicated to bringing you the latest insight and discussions from the cattle industry. So sit back, get ready to expand your knowledge with today's episode. And with today's episode, I'd love to welcome our guest today, Dr. Jody Wade from Boehringer Ingelheim. He is the Senior Professional Services Veterinarian for BI, located in the southeastern part of the United States. So Jody, welcome to the Beef Podcast Show.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on. This is awesome. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, this is fun. And we've got a great topic. We're going to dive into young cat vaccination. But before that, Dr. Wade, I got to ask you. You've been around the industry for a long time. Can you walk us through a little bit of your background, what you do today, kind of a little bit more about your background? I'd like to hear from that out of your own words.
You bet, AJ. I was born and raised right here on the farm in Oakman, Alabama, which is just a little bit west of Birmingham. So we're in west central Alabama. Was actually born and raised on a dairy farm. And my family, they still get a little upset with me when I say the happiest day of my life. Instead of getting married or having kids, it was the day that those black and white goddesses left the house, because those things nearly killed us growing up. It was twice a day, every day, 7 days a week, and they nearly worked us to death. But it really built a good work ethic for me, and I always wanted to be a veterinarian. So ever since the dairy cows left, we've been in the beef cow operation, and we run about 400 mama cows here where we're at, and I tell you, it's an awesome place to wake up in the morning and look out the window and see cows and calves walking around. It's been a good gig.
Well, it's a good life. But you were able to stay in Alabama. You went to Auburn, yes?
I did, yes, sir. I went to vet school at Auburn, did my undergrad down there as well. And after I graduated there at Auburn, I actually took a job in Texas for a little while in a pretty good sized mixed practice, and I learned a lot. I tell you, it was an awesome experience. And after I was there for a couple of years, I moved to Northeast Tennessee, and my goal is just to work up there for a couple of years and get some more good experience to come back home. And I never left. I was there 25 years in that big practice with 18 other veterinarians. And it was, I tell you what, it was a busy place. And I guess the good Lord's blessed me. You know, I've never had to do dogs and cats. I've done cattle and horses my whole life. That's all I've ever worked on. So I don't even work on my own wife's pets. So they go somewhere else. So it's like I say, it's just been an awesome career, and it's been a blessing to be able to not only practice veterinary medicine where I practice, but also have the opportunities in industry that I've had as well.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up that you don't even work on your wife's pets, because I don't either. My neighbor's got a vet clinic just a couple miles down the road. Our dogs and cat, they go over there. So I'm glad I'm not alone.
I do the same.
Well, Jody, tell us a little bit more about what you do today. Who you're working with, and kind of what your main role is.
I went to work for industry a few years back, and it I tell you, it was something I never thought I'd ever do when I was going through vet school. Honestly, I didn't even know that opportunity even existed, and I had a great opportunity to jump into industry, and I went to work for a company that's no longer in existence called Fort Dodge Animal Health. And I worked for Fort Dodge for about 13 or 14 years, and then they were acquired by Boehringer Ingelheim in a buyout. And I just stayed on with Boehringer, and I have been there ever since. So this is my 28th year in industry, and I tell you, it's been an awesome learning experience. I was drinking from a fire hydrant initially, but now I feel like I'm full. I feel like I'm getting up to my level that I need to be, where I can at least not have to drink anymore from the fire hydrant.
Boehringer Ingelheim puts cattle first. They deliver cutting-edge vaccines, parasiticides, and supplements to help keep cattle healthy and productive. From supporting fresh cows with Bovical calcium boluses To protecting your herd with pyramid vaccines, Boehringer stands with veterinarians and producers every step of the way. Put cattle first on your operation. Learn more at bianimalhealth.com/cattle.
Well, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today, because you've got a wealth of experience, practical information, practical understanding, both from your own operation, private practice. You had a full career in private practice. Now you get to see things with a kind of a little bit different hat on from industry. And I think that yields perfect for our discussion today. And so our topic for today, we're going to talk about young calf vaccination. And there is, as a veterinarian, it's so difficult that there's no cookie cutter recommendation, but we can get down to some of the baselines and understanding and impacting that immune system. So I guess let's start where potentially things go awry or things go wrong, or maybe it's misinterpreted. But what are some common pitfalls that producers might encounter when we're trying to strengthen the calf immunity, but it doesn't go right?
You mentioned the biggest one, AJ, earlier, and it's definitely they don't all fit the same textbook. I mean, I try to talk to our clients on a routine basis. We need to sit down and we need to talk about specifics on certain protocols because of the way that they manage cattle, the way they feed cattle, and they all can be different. But it's a hard concept for producers sometimes to understand that, guys, we need to get this on paper. We need to sit down and make sure we're following these things to the T. And timing is so big when it comes to some of these vaccination protocols as far as keeping these calves healthy.
So pre-planning, making sure we have the right timing right, and visiting with your veterinarian. The veterinary client-patient relationship, making sure that your veterinarian understands your operation, understands your program, understands what your goals are, to be able to make some better product choices and implementation of some of these programs can really go a long way, right?
I agree, and they have to keep their veterinarian involved. I try to say that in every meeting that I do in front of producers across the country, that if they don't have a good food animal veterinarian, they need to find one and placard their phone number across the front of their refrigerator so it's handy, and make sure that they call them and ask them questions. Anytime something like that comes up, they need to be involved in the decisions that are being made on that facility.
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the immune function of the young calf. And I guess best place to start is talking about colostrum. Here we are, the first couple hours of life. That's kind of where it all begins. And what's the importance of that colostrum to set the stage for immunity for that calf going forward?
You bet. I have changed my tune 100% over the years on what I do with colostrum, and a lot of that I can give to some pretty good colleagues of mine. But and I'll give credit where credit's due. Dr. John Curran, who is a really good friend up at Virginia Tech, he tells everybody if you have to pull a calf, there's no reason in the world you should leave that farm without getting some colostrum in that calf before you leave. Because there's chances that calf is going to be a little bit or a little bit compromised respiratory wise and physicality wise from that hard pull, and they're probably not going to get up and nurse like they need to right away. So that you do not need to leave that farm before you get colostrum in those calves. Colostrum is such a crucial piece of that puzzle initially to try to keep them protected. The other thing that's big with me is when I was in vet school, 30 something years ago now, they told us, colostrum interference is real, and it's something that you really need to be concerned about. So I have changed my tune a little bit about that. I know that there is, they still see it pretty big in the pet side, but I know with the way we manufacture vaccines today on the cattle side, we have some really good adjuvant systems out there that can protect that colostrum or protect that antibody, and we can vaccinate those calves at a lot earlier age than what we thought we could before, and not see that colostral interference that we saw before as well. So the days of seeing colostral interference in everything that we do is out the window now.
Yeah, well, talk a little bit more for the listeners and explain a little bit more about that maternal antibody interference, the colostrum interference. We kind of have some binding activity happening because we get really good colostrum that maybe they don't, in some circumstances, they don't respond as well to some of our vaccines or some of our implementation.
Agreed. And we do see it. I mean, we still see, especially if those cattle get really, really good colostrum, we still see a little bit of interference with it with certain vaccines that are in the marketplace. But some of the vaccines that are out there can do a really good job even battling that colostral immunity and those colostral antibodies that are circulating. Those colostral antibodies, though, are crucial. Like I said, those things, if we know we get good colostrum from that cow initially, we know that they will be protected in those early stages of life. And the unfortunate part is where we see failure is, even though we know they got colostrum and maybe that cow herd hadn't been vaccinated as good as we thought they had in the past, they're getting colostrum, but it's just not good quality colostrum. So it's not as protective as it should be. And those windows fade really, really quick. When they are getting exposed to disease, that colostral antibody gets eaten up pretty quickly.
And, from the cow side, I know our conversation's on the calf, but are there some things producers should keep in mind and veterinarians recommending things to producers on the cow side to be able to make sure that we're getting good quality colostrum that's getting passed on to that calf?
One thing that we talk about as a veterinary group on a routine basis now is making sure that we get these cows started off really, really young as well. Making sure that they're vaccinated well as heifers as they go through that growth phase, making sure we're getting the right vaccines in at the right time, timing wise, to make sure that we can protect those fetuses and build good colostral immunity in those heifers as they go through that first stage of being a mom. That's really important, because if you can drive that immunity initially, then it's pretty easy to keep driving that immunity as they mature and keep passing that immunity onto those babies as they calve every year. So starting them early is crucial, making sure that we make the right choices on vaccines, which is why those veterinarians are going to be so crucially important to make sure that they're involved in those protocols initially.
Yeah. And we can't forget, and even as a veterinarian, I'm not afraid to admit, but nutrition of those cows, especially throughout gestation, critically important for the quality and quantity of that colostrum.
Yeah, critically important. And you nailed it on the head. When what we've seen, and there's a lot of work that's been done in Nebraska looking at it too, is those cows and heifers that calve in that first 21-day cycle. Those are going to be in that herd for a long period of time, and that's hereditary. I mean, we feel like that if that's passed on to that heifer that's born through that cow that's calving in that first 21-day cycle, usually we see that keep happening even with those younger stock once they start coming along. Those tail enders, they don't seem to stay in the herd very long because they just can't stay in that 40 to 63-day calving cycle that you see in a lot of these bigger herds today.
No, it's timing is everything. And
timing is everything.
Yeah. So getting back to the young calf, we've got a newborn calf. It consumes a bunch of colostrum, gets that ready-made. How long does that colostrum interact and kind of function as the key player of the immune system?
It varies, and that's a great point. I'm glad you brought it up, because when you see the good quality of colostrum in those calves, and it's according to what the antigen is, but most of them can stay in there between 4 and 7 months, which goes along with some of the vaccination schedules that we've seen in the past. But if it's not good quality colostrum, then that colostral antibody wanes pretty quickly, unfortunately. I was not a believer in vaccinating these guys early, I'll be honest with you. But then we started seeing some of that work coming out of some of the universities like Oklahoma State and University of Arkansas, and some of those areas were doing a lot of these early calf vaccinations, and they were seeing some of the same titers in those cattle and some of the same protection when they challenged them that they saw in a routine vaccination program or a standard vaccination program where they were doing it prior to weaning and at weaning. They were doing some of these calves as early as 30 days of age and seeing phenomenal antibody occurrence because of this vaccination, even in these really young calves. So we know that they were responding at a really young age.
So they get the colostrum. We know that there's varying amount of quality, but if we're going to start implementing a plan, you mentioned 30 days. How young can we start vaccinating calves where at least we're confident that most of them are going to respond?
Great point. Well, and the one I always fall back on when I say this was done by a very good colleague of mine, Dr. D.L. Stepp, when he was still at Oklahoma State. And him and Dr. Robert Fulton, who is retired now there, did most of this work. And what they looked at is they compared a traditional vaccination program to what they called an early vaccination program. And the thing that was impressive to me is when as they followed those calves all the way through as they went through the production phase, and they saw no differences in how those calves performed as far as respiratory insults or any type of issues that would come along through the production phases. The most interesting thing to me is the BVD titers that they looked at in those calves. Those BVD titers in the calves that were early vaccinated were much higher than the ones that went through a traditional vaccination program, that was kind of shocking to me. So I felt like that those calves were doing a really good job of responding to these things, even at an early phase. And the good part about doing it early like that is it does take a little bit of the work out of it. I mean, if you're bringing those cows through the chute to preg check them and you've got 40 to 50-day-old calves at their side, why not give them something if they're going to get a response from it? If it's going to work and you don't have to handle them again, the stress of going through that chute one less time is going to be pretty nice because they're there already with mom for the palpation phase.
Or at turnout phase, we've
Exactly.
gone through, we're getting ready to go to summer pasture. At least in my part of the country, it's cows and calves, everything's getting worked, and they kind of get that first touch point right before they get turned out. That there's an opportunity to interact with the immune system at that point.
Agreed, 100% agreed. Yes, sir.
Okay, so you mentioned that the BVD titers. What at this, let's say this first touch point, this young calf, what are we after to try to get protection against? I mean, if we pulled up the compendium, we have 1,000 different options. What antigens are important to that calf's immune system going forward, kind of at that point in time?
The one that absolutely deals less fits here in the Southeast is BVD. It's without a doubt the biggest one that we deal with on a regular basis. And it's just because of persistent infection that we see in some of these calves. We talk about it a lot, and the biggest thing I think it gets us in trouble is there's a small percentage of these PIs that are out there. If you look at all the research that's been done, they say that it's usually about 4 calves out of every 1,000 head that you'll see a persistent infection in. The unfortunate part is those calves shed so much virus. Dr. Givens, who was down at Auburn for a while, who's also down at Virginia Tech as the deans, he did some research where he said that these calves will shed up to 1 million viral particles per cc of saliva. So when they drink out of a water tank or put their head in a feed bunk, they're putting so much virus out on that trough or in that water tub that, anything that comes along behind it is going to pick that virus up. There's no doubt about it. There's just so much there. So if we can cut down on those persistently infected calves that are going through production, we can be ahead of the game. It's going to help. And about the only way that we can do that is by vaccinating those cows appropriately to keep them from becoming persistently infected while they're in utero, while they're in the fetus.
45 to 120 days, right? That's
Yes, sir. That's it. That's the perfect time span. I got a good friend that's a BVD researcher down at Auburn, and he told me that. He said, if you guys ever want to do some BVD research, he said, my perfect challenge time is somewhere between 40 and 120 days. And he said, if I can challenge those calves with a hot BVD virus, I can cause persistent infection in just about 100% of them. And he's right. He really is. He's right.
Yeah. So BVD, and again, yes, we can prevent those issues by the cow, but we vaccinate the calf to try to get some added protection because we know some point along the way they will be exposed to a wild type virus. So on top of BVD, what are some other antigens that we really want to try to get some early protection?
Well, on the viral side, IBR, BRSV, and PI3 are still there. We don't see a lot of PI3, or I don't get to see a lot of PI3 here in the Southeast. But the others I do see. I'd still see occasionally some IBRs and some BRSVs sneak through, and they always cause immunosuppression, and they always get us in trouble and cause disease. These secondary invaders, these secondary bacterial problems that we see, they're just sitting there waiting on the chance to jump in when we see immunosuppression. And here in the past couple of years, we've been seeing a lot of Mannheimia. We've been seeing a lot of Histophilus, unfortunately. And when these calves get those two, I mean, they get sick. I mean, they really, really do. And in today's day and age, if you don't treat them early, then we just turn them into chronics that we know are eventually not going to make it through the production cycle.
No, well put, well put. So we're trying to get some added protection from the virals. We know BRD and pneumonia, it's a multifactorial illness. The bacteria, they're already there, but we're trying to reduce the stress from those viruses. And so the earlier the better is kind of what I'm hearing, that we can do it reliably down to a young age. But when we vaccinate, I guess it's good for everybody to keep in mind. What are we actually doing with the immune system when we vaccinate?
That's a great point. It really is. People talk about vaccination and everything that they do, and the unfortunate part is when we talk to cattlemen about vaccines, they think they're 100%. And they're not. I mean, it doesn't matter how good a job you do, you're going to have a few non-responders that's just flat out not going to respond to the vaccine. The other thing that a good friend of mine used to say is we can vaccinate just about 100% of the cattle that we see on a daily basis, but we're not immunizing them. Immunization and vaccination are two totally different things. So we want to hope that we get at least 80 to 85 of those 85% of those calves immunized when we vaccinate. And if we can get 85% of those guys or more, then we hope we get herd immunity. We hope we get the rest of them eventually, that the rest of them will see the future build of antibodies in their system just from being exposed to those other cattle. Immunization is huge. I mean, we've definitely seen it as these calves go through the production phase. Those calves that did not get vaccinated properly, they're going to get sick. And those are the ones that gives you black eyes when you sell those cattle and they go through the marketplace or go through a private sale somewhere and you have issues with them. They're not going to buy those calves again next year, especially at the prices they're giving for them right now. They're just not going to do it. So the number one thing that comes out now when I start seeing calves sell is especially from the guys that are buying them and keep retaining ownership all the way through, is they want to know, have they been vaccinated? How many rounds have they had? Had they been preconditioned so that they know what a feed bunk and a water trough is once they get there? They got three pretty strict questions that they want to know, because when you're paying $4 a pound for them, you better keep them healthy as they go through.
Yeah, so great points, that just because you administered a product doesn't necessarily mean that the animal responded, because their immune system has to actively work to respond. Doesn't mean they actually have protection. And you mentioned rounds of vaccines. We can start some of these programs earlier in life. But if we only get 85%, sometimes we have to give it an additional booster a little bit later to make sure that we're trying to get more of those critters protected, right?
You bet. Yes, sir. And like you said earlier, timing is crucial. If we can time them right, where we can get those first vaccines in and then maybe a booster or a secondary vaccine in a little later, timing wise is so crucial to see those immune responses come up like they're supposed to.
And for a lot of producers, sometimes it's touch points. When can they feasibly touch those animals? And maybe it's at turnout, and then maybe it's at preg check. Maybe it's prior to weaning, right? But it's got to work with the producer's program.
It really does, and it's frustrating because there's so many pieces of the puzzle. If especially if we're using modified live vaccines, a lot of producers don't understand, once we reconstitute that vaccine, you've got a certain time limit to get that vaccine in that animal. And if it's not in that particular timeline, then that vaccine is no longer a live vaccine. It's a kill vaccine, and it's a very poor kill vaccine. It's just not going to do a very good job of immunizing those cattle. So if we can make sure that they're handling that vaccine correctly, mixing only what they can use in about a 1 hour time slot, we can stay way ahead of the game as far as making sure that we're doing everything correctly management wise to make sure that those vaccines have the best chance of giving an immune response.
I'm so glad you brought up quality control on some of those products, making sure that we're transporting them. If they need to be refrigerated 35 to 45 degrees, that's until administration of that product. So we protect sunlight. Exactly. Now, I know in my part of the country we have some operators, and they have cattle scattered all over the place, and 10 here, 5 here. It's good. good for folks to know, they don't only sell 50 dose vials. They also sell pens and fives and things like that, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If you and I always try to say that if you can't get 50 doses in them within an hour, do not reconstitute 50 doses. Do not do it. It's amazing though, as much as I travel across the country to still see people, they're getting ready to process 200 head of calves, and they'll mix up 200 doses of vaccine right as they're ready to go. So everything's ready and everything's prepared by the chute. There's no way you can get 200 calves through that chute in a 1 hour time slot. There's no way. I've processed a lot of cattle before, and I feel like I'm at a timed event at the National Finals Rodeo, but I can't do them that fast.
No. And even at some of our feed yards, I mean, with pretty expansive systems and folks that do this for a living, I mean, if you're doing 100 head an hour, you're
smoking. Yes, sir. Right. You're smoking.
Well, I guess, are there any other key considerations that as folks sit down with the veterinarian, as that conversation's happening, are there any other considerations that should really help focus and help with the scope of vaccines and the entire program in a holistic way?
Yeah, and it all goes back to management. If you look at it, we can talk about the different pieces of the puzzle, and you brought it up a little bit earlier. Nutrition is so big. I mean, if these cattle aren't on a good nutritional plane, they're not going to respond to the vaccines like they should. If they're not getting good nutrition, it's a wasted time. It really is. And I hate to say that, but it is. Vaccines can only do so much, but there's so much more that we can do management wise that can make all those vaccines do what they're supposed to do as long as we manage everything correctly. So yeah, nutrition, number one, good colostrum quality is number two to me. Management of those calves where they're in a non-stress environment, that's another big one, making sure that we're processing those calves without hot shots behind them, or making sure you got a lot of yelling and screaming going on when it's happening. All that stuff plays a role, and any stress like that can really affect the way that they're going to respond to those vaccines.
Do you have any tips or tidbits of the actual vaccination process? We talked about storage and handling, making sure that it's mixed appropriately, you mix as you go. But what about administration? Making sure that the animals actually responding to the vaccine and we don't get either a reaction or an abscess or something along those lines.
You bet. And that's a great point, too. We don't get to talk about that as much as we used to, but beef quality assurance is huge. It's such a big deal. And we shoot for that vaccine triangle in the neck area is where you want most of your vaccines to go. Most of the vaccines today have a subcutaneous label, so we want them to go subcutaneously if you can, rather than going in the muscle. And it's really easy to go in the muscle by accident. I mean, that's the frustration. The NCBA at one point in their BQA guidelines had tinning the skin as being part of their rules and regulations, which I thought was awesome. But today they have taken tinning the skin out of those rules to be BQA certified because there was too many people actually sticking themselves when they would tint the skin. They would go through the tin and into their hand. So BQA took that out, or NCBA took that out. But I still tint the skin on every calf I inject. I think it doesn't waste time. It's quick and easy. I know I'm in the sub-Q space if I can tint the skin when I'm doing that, but avoid that rear end where all those good primal cuts are at all costs. Make sure you stay in that vaccine triangle. The other thing that you mentioned too is cleaning syringes. A lot of people, if you're going to use soap and alcohol with modified lives, you're wasting your time. We can kill those modified live vaccines so quickly by the use of soap or alcohols to clean those syringes up. So just good scalding hot water. It does a phenomenal job. What we try to do is we try to mark our syringes. We'll put colored tape on our syringes so we know what vaccine goes back into those specific syringes so we don't cross-contaminate them. Because if you get a modified live vaccine and you accidentally put it back in a syringe that's had a Clostridial vaccine or something in it, we could destroy that modified live vaccine because of the diluents and things that's in that Clostridial vaccine. So you just have to be very careful in making sure you're being very cognizant of what goes back into those syringes when you reload.
These are great tips, great points, and I very much appreciate hearing that from someone like yourself to be able to share with our listeners. I guess we're getting close to, if folks that haven't turned out already, we're almost there. Any last tidbits before either a veterinarian that's talking to their, one of their customers, or a producer that's going to talk to their veterinarian. Any other tips that you'd like to give them?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to reiterate, if you're a cattleman and you don't have a good veterinarian or good food animal veterinarian on staff that you can yell at any time in a close proximity, please find one. We're doing our best. If you talk to the vet schools, they're trying their best to get more food animal veterinarians graduated and out, the kids that want to work in food animal practice, because we do have a shortage. There's no doubt about that. But the ones that are still out there getting it pretty hard, that's their love, that's their passion. Make sure you keep them involved. And make sure it's written down. I mean, if you've got when these protocols, when you talk about them and you've got it written down, if there's ever any question, you can go back to it and you can look at those protocols. And I'll be honest with you, when we sell calves every year, most of our buyers here, they want to see our protocols. They want to look at them and evaluate what we've done and make sure that what we're giving is going to fit into the program that they're going to go to when they go through that production phase in the stocker phase or either in a feed yard. So if you've got it written down, you can pass it along. You can confirm that things have been done correctly. And then if there's any questions there, you don't have to wonder.
Great tips, and buyers really like that information, by the way.
Amen. They really do. They really like that information.
It's time for our famous three.
This has been fun. Now, I can't let you go yet. It's kind of a tradition with the Beat Podcast show that we always give 3 questions to all of our guests at the end.
Okay.
And we talked about this beforehand, so I gave you a heads up. But I guess you're a lifelong learner. We all are. We're always trying to stay up to date with information. What is your go-to place to find information to stay up to date with new research, as well as staying up to date with veterinary medicine? What's your go-to?
You know, I've been blessed because I'm actually the member of 2 phenomenal societies, the Academy of Veterinary Consultants. I'm a member of those guys, and I'm also a member of AABP. And both of those have sites that we can go to and ask questions with some of our colleagues. And believe me, it's a resource that you just cannot live without in food animal veterinary medicine, because if you see something that you haven't seen before, I promise you, if you bounce it off some of those guys that have a lot of gray hair like I do, they some of them have seen it before, and they may have seen it more than once. So they can definitely fill your ear and make sure that you're trying to treat appropriately or trying to make the right choices when it comes back to how to manage those type of cattle. So I rely on that quite a bit. My colleagues is one of my sources of information, and believe me, I wear it out. I call them all the time. I keep them on speed dial.
Yeah, I love it. I'm on the list serves every day, just seeing what folks are talking about. But AABP, AVC, they're fantastic groups. Number 2, my second question. What are you doing outside of work? What are you diving into? What information are you absorbing that's maybe not cattle related?
Well, that has changed a little bit since we've moved back to the farm. I've turned into a farmer trying to help my dad manage cattle. My dad's 87 now, so he's getting on up in the years, and so I'm trying to help him as much as I can and still maintain a full-time job. So that's been a big one. But the biggest thing I'm doing is I got two grandchildren now, 2 little boys that I chase around all the time. So that is a full-time job that I didn't realize was going to absolutely work you to death. But I'm getting back in shape by chasing 2 little boys. So it's been a fun deal.
That's fantastic. Well, I've got a young boy right now, and yes, he keeps us busy. Well, thirdly, my last question, I have fun with this question, and you've worked with a lot of people in a lot of different scenarios over the years. In your opinion, what are some characteristics that make a true professional and a good colleague?
You know, the biggest thing for me is number one, being available. If people call, you need to answer the phone. Those days of being able to pick up the phone after 6 o'clock and call on a food animal veterinarian for an emergency, and they don't answer their phone after hours, that's a no-go. You've got to be available. You've got to make sure that you're easy to get a hold of, easy accessible, so that you can get out and do the things that you need to do when it comes to making sure your clients get the best care. that's the big one for me. And showing up, if they call you and they need something, you need to go. You need to make sure that you're there. And if you both are going to get nasty and wet and sweaty and unfortunately lose a few battles here and there, you need to do it together, and if you do it together, you build that trust, and that trust as a true advisor, it never goes away once you build that trust. And it's something that you just, they don't give it away every day. You have to earn that trust, but once you earn it, it lasts a long time.
And we talk about the, BCPR and the veterinary client-patient relationship, but it really is a bond. It's a relationship. It's a bond that's kind of forged in fire, right?
I agree 100%. Yes, sir. I have a really good friend of mine that was a veterinarian that passed away over in Memphis, Tennessee. And one of my favorite stories he used to tell was when he had two sons that were veterinarians, and when they came along, he decided he wasn't going to take emergencies anymore. And unfortunately, everybody had his phone number anyway. So they would call him late at night, at midnight or 1 a.m. And he got a phone call about a cow calving. And he told the guy, he said, look, I'm not doing emergencies anymore, but if you'll call this phone number, they'll come take care of you. Well, he thought that he'd given one of his son's phone numbers out. And the next morning when he got to the clinic, he said one of his best dairymen was sitting on the front bench out there, and he was just covered in placenta. And he asked him, he said, what are you doing here so early? And he said, Doc, I went and pulled that calf for that guy last night, but I didn't know what to bill him, so you're just going to have to send him a bill. Apparently, he gave out his dairyman's phone number, and the dairyman, that's a pretty good account right there. He got out of bed and went and pulled the calf for the guy, no questions asked. So that's the kind of accounts that you want to have, the ones that are going to take care of you as well as you taking care of them.
Oh, that's good. That is good. Well, Dr. Wade, thank you very much for joining us on the Beef Podcast Show, brought to you by Wisenetics. Is there anything else you'd like to throw out before we finish up this episode?
AJ, I just appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having us on. You guys do a phenomenal job, so we really appreciate you guys having us on. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's truly been a pleasure. So, again, Dr. Jody Wade, he's the Senior Professional Services Veterinarian for Boehringer Ingelheim, also a cattle operator in Alabama, and all around a great guy and great veterinarian. So it's been a pleasure. And again, I'm Dr. AJ Tarpoff with the Beef Podcast Show. Thank you for tuning in, and don't be afraid to share this podcast show with your friends, your relatives, and whoever that might be interested in learning a little bit more about what we love so much, which is raising beef cattle. So with that, we'll tune in on the next show. Thanks for joining in.